I used to believe I was managing my money just fine. I paid my bills, avoided big splurges, and never thought of myself as wasteful. But over time, a quiet discomfort began to grow inside me. I started asking questions I had never dared to ask before. Why does it feel like my money does not stretch the way it used to? Am I spending on the wrong things without realizing? What have I overlooked? That quiet feeling turned into a heavy one, and I knew I had to face the truth. Getting older does not protect us from financial mistakes. In fact, sometimes it makes them harder to see. 1. Not adjusting spending to longer life expectancy. When I first stepped into retirement, I did what I thought was responsible. I had a nest egg, a rough monthly budget, and a general plan for how long it would last. I figured I had about 15 years, maybe 20 if I was lucky. That's what I saw most people my age plan for. I never imagined I'd still be sitting here decades later, healthy, active, and financially nervous. The mistake was never obvious. I wasn't wasting money. I wasn't buying fancy cars or throwing cash around. What I did was much more subtle. I spent as though retirement was a short chapter, not a full third of my life. I did not adjust my lifestyle to match the reality that people are living longer, often much longer than they used to. In my early years of retirement, I traveled more than I probably should have. I took the grandkids on trips. I helped one of my children with a down payment. I replaced furniture that didn't need replacing. I told myself, you deserve to enjoy this. And that was partly true. But there was a hidden cost. Somewhere around year 10, I began to feel uneasy. My savings weren't growing the way I thought. The market had its ups and downs, of course, but it wasn't just that. I realized I had been living in fast forward, spending like I was on borrowed time when really I still had a long road ahead. And the truth is, it's not about guilt. It's about understanding. We come from a generation where life expectancy was shorter. People retired at 65 and were gone before 78. But now 85 is common. 90 isn't rare. And those extra years, if we're lucky enough to have them, come with real expenses. What I've learned is this: retirement isn't the finish line. It's a long stretch of road that needs just as much planning as the years before it. And part of that planning means being honest about how long we might live and how slowly we need to spend to make it last. 2. Ignoring inflation when planning expenses. I never paid much attention to inflation. It was something I heard economists talk about on the news or read in the financial section I used to skip. But now, living on a fixed income, I feel it everywhere. In the grocery store, in the energy bill, at the pharmacy. It's not just numbers on paper. It's a real daily squeeze. When I first retired, my budget looked solid. I accounted for the things I'd always spent money on: food, utilities, insurance, a bit of fun. But I made one dangerous assumption: that prices would stay roughly the same. I didn't think to add a cushion. I didn't factor in what would happen when $10 no longer bought what it used to. At first, it was gradual. A couple extra bucks for a prescription refill, a higher electricity bill in the winter. Then suddenly everything felt more expensive. The same grocery trip cost 30% more. Dining out felt indulgent. And slowly, I found myself tightening up, not because I was overspending, but because my money was losing value while I wasn't looking. I used to think saving was the hard part, but in retirement, preserving the value of what you've saved becomes just as important. I've had to rethink my budget year by year. I track my expenses now more closely than I ever did in my working life. I read receipts. I compare prices. Not because I've become cheap, but because I want my money to last with dignity. If I could go back, I'd build in a buffer. I'd assume things will cost more, because they always do. And I'd tell my younger self this: the future is not just about how much you have, but about how far it can go. Inflation is slow but unforgiving. and ignoring it is a mistake I won't make twice. 3. Making big purchases to feel young again. There's a strange thing that happens when you stop working. For the first time in years, you have time, but you also lose a sense of who you were. You're not the manager anymore, or the teacher, or the nurse. You're just you. And that silence can be disorienting. In that space, I started to feel the pull to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I was still young, still relevant, still in it. So I bought things. A new car, sleek and far more than I needed. A smartphone with features I never used. A wardrobe update that sat mostly untouched in the closet. It wasn't about materialism. It was about identity. I was trying to reclaim something, some sense of energy, youth, possibility. But all it did was chip away at my savings while leaving the deeper feelings untouched. No one talks about the emotional part of spending. We focus on numbers, budgets, and accounts. But money is deeply tied to how we see ourselves. I didn't need a new car. I needed to feel alive again. And that's something no purchase can give you. I've learned that acceptance is not giving up. It's grace. It's letting yourself step into this stage of life with honesty and self-respect. These days, I still treat myself, but I ask myself, am I buying this because I need it, or because I miss who I was? The second question is harder, but it's the one that saves me from spending money trying to fill a space that only self-acceptance can touch. Spending emotionally after major life changes. No one ever told me how grief can show up in your wallet. After my wife passed, the house became too quiet, the days too long. I found myself wandering stores, picking things up I didn't need. A new recliner, another coffee machine, books I never read, a small kitchen gadget I used once. Each item at the time felt like an act of care, like I was taking control of something, like I was trying to rebuild a life around myself. But it wasn't rebuilding, it was avoiding. And over time, I realized that I had made emotional spending a habit, not because I was careless, but because I was hurting. The same thing happened when I retired. I didn't just lose a job. I lost structure, routine, a sense of purpose. I started eating out more, shopping online late at night, telling myself, I deserve it. And maybe I did. But I was also spending to soften feelings I hadn't named yet. Loneliness, fear, uncertainty. The danger is that emotional spending doesn't feel reckless. It feels comforting. It feels normal. But it slowly chips away at your financial foundation while leaving the real problem untouched. I've had to learn new ways to deal with those feelings. I talk more. I walk more. I allow myself to feel sad without rushing to fix it with a purchase. And I forgive myself for the times I didn't know better. If you're going through a major life change, be gentle with yourself. But be honest too. Spending can soothe, but it cannot heal. And healing, true healing, does not come from your credit card. 5. Falling for scams or high-risk offers due to trust or isolation. I used to think scams only happened to careless people. People who were naive or greedy. People who clicked strange links or gave out their social security number over the phone. I never thought it could happen to me. I was careful. I read the news. I never fell for anything in my younger years. But age changes more than your body. It changes your guard. It started with a phone call. A polite man with a calm voice said he was from the IRS. He told me I had a payment issue, and if I didn't settle it that day, I could face legal trouble. My heart raced. The idea of owing anything, especially to the government, made me panic. I didn't even stop to question how they got my number or why they were calling at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't give him my bank account, thankfully, but I was close. Too close. And even after I hung up, I spent the rest of the day shaken, not just by the scam, but by the realization that I had almost believed it. That moment haunted me more than I expected. As we get older, something quiet happens. We become more trusting, not because we're foolish, but because we want to believe people mean well. And sometimes we're lonely. We're used to being the ones people come to for advice, for help, for guidance. So when someone speaks to us with urgency or respect, we listen, especially if it sounds official or helpful or kind. That's exactly what scammers count on. It's not just phone calls. It's emails about Medicare, deadlines, fake charities, investment offers that sound too good but come dressed in professionalism. I've had friends who lost thousands, people smarter than me, all because they were caught off guard during a vulnerable moment. There's also another danger: high-risk opportunities. A neighbor once told me about a guaranteed return investment in a property fund overseas. He said it was safe, already making money, and that a few other retirees had joined in. I almost said yes. I liked the idea of my money working for me without touching my savings. But something in me hesitated, and I'm grateful it did, because 6 months later, that fund vanished without a trace. Here's what I've learned. When someone pressures you to act fast or promises something that sounds perfect, that's the moment to pause. Real opportunities allow time for thought. Real professionals want you to be confident, not anxious. And real peace comes from knowing your money is safe, not hoping it'll grow overnight. Talk to someone you trust, a family member, a financial advisor. Do not feel embarrassed for asking. Asking is wisdom. Getting older does not mean we should stop learning. It means we should be more cautious with what we've earned, because we have less time to recover from mistakes. And remember, being kind and open-hearted is a gift, but it doesn't mean leaving your door and your bank account wide open. 6. Overpaying for convenience. Because of fear or fatigue, there was a time when I would shop around for every deal. I would compare prices at 3 different stores, fix my own faucet, mow my own lawn. Not because I had to, but because I could. I had the energy, the patience, and frankly, the pride. Now things have changed. My knees ache, my back stiffens after 20 minutes of bending over. Even going through a pile of mail to check for hidden charges or junk subscriptions feels exhausting some days. And slowly, I've noticed how my spending habits have shifted, not out of carelessness, but out of weariness. I started paying more for delivery services, even when the store was just a few blocks away. I hired someone to clean the gutters, even though it used to be my weekend chore. I signed up for automatic renewals on things I wasn't even using anymore, because going through the trouble of canceling felt like more effort than it was worth. There's no shame in making life easier. We've earned some convenience, but the trap is when convenience becomes the default, not the exception. When it becomes something we pay for automatically, not because we need it, but because we're too tired to explore alternatives. I once paid a plumber $400 for something I later learned could have been fixed with a $5 washer and 10 minutes of work, if I'd had the energy to Google it and read a few steps. Another time, I kept a premium cable package I barely used for almost 2 years because I didn't want to deal with the dreaded call to customer service. And this is where it gets tricky. Businesses know we value our time and energy more than our money. So they design systems to make it easier to keep paying than to stop. Subscription models, maintenance plans, one-click checkouts. They're not evil, but they rely on us being too worn out to care. Now I try to pause before paying for convenience. I ask myself, is this a help or a habit? If I'm physically unable, then yes, I pay. But if I'm just tired, I might wait a day. Or ask for help. Or see if there's a simpler option. There's strength in knowing your limits, but there's also wisdom in not letting those limits slowly drain your finances. Overpaying is not always about money. It's sometimes a symptom of burnout, and that too deserves attention and care. 7. Overlooking tax implications of retirement withdrawals. I never liked thinking about taxes. Even when I was working, I just handed everything to the accountant, signed where I needed to, and hoped for the best. But once I retired, I assumed the hard part was over. I thought my income was simpler now. No paycheck, just some savings, maybe a pension, and Social Security. I thought taxes wouldn't matter much anymore. I was wrong. The first time I took a larger than usual withdrawal from my retirement account, I didn't think twice. I wanted to help one of my kids with medical bills and cover some home repairs. But come tax season, I got a letter saying I owed thousands more than I expected. I was stunned. How could that be? I wasn't making income the way I used to. Why was I being taxed so heavily? Turns out, money from certain retirement accounts, like traditional IRAs and 401ks, is considered taxable income. And if you take too much in a single year, it can push you into a higher tax bracket. Add Social Security into the mix, and suddenly things get messy. I had unknowingly triggered a higher tax burden just by trying to be generous and get things done in one go. What hurt wasn't just the money, it was the surprise. I felt like I had done something wrong when, really, I had just not known better. I started reading more. I talked to a financial advisor. I learned about strategies like tax-efficient withdrawals, required minimum distributions, and spreading large expenses over multiple years to stay in a lower bracket. I realized that retirement finances are not set it and forget it. They're alive. They change, and they demand attention. I also learned that taxes don't disappear just because you stop working. In some ways, they become trickier because the money feels like it's yours and you forget Uncle Sam still has his hand out. Now I plan my withdrawals carefully. I spread out large expenses. I keep a buffer account with liquid savings so I don't always have to dip into taxable funds. And I make sure to review my plan every year, not just once a decade. 8. Keeping too much cash and not letting money work. I used to think that if money was sitting safely in my bank account, I was doing the right thing. No risk, no worry, no surprises. It felt responsible, secure. But over time, I started noticing something strange. The money was safe, yes, but it wasn't growing. In fact, it was shrinking in value slowly, almost invisibly. I wasn't spending recklessly. But every year, things got more expensive, and the interest from my savings couldn't keep up. The $5 I used to spend on a sandwich barely covered half a meal. And that same safe money I had kept parked for years, untouched, was now worth less than it used to be, simply because I hadn't done anything with it. It took me a while to understand the difference between saving and preserving value. Keeping money in a checking account feels like security, but inflation quietly chips away at it every single year. $1,000 today will not buy what it could 5 years ago. And 5 years from now, it'll buy even less. I'm not saying we should all become investors at 70, but I wish someone had told me that letting money sit forever isn't safe. It's slow loss. Now, I don't take big risks. I'm not chasing high returns, but I did move a portion of my savings into low-risk income-generating accounts. Things like short-term bonds, high-yield savings, or stable dividend funds. I keep enough cash for emergencies. But I no longer treat my savings like something to hoard. I treat it like something to steward. The point isn't to gamble. It's to respect your money enough to help it keep its value. You spent your life earning it. Let it do a little work for you now. 9. Not asking for financial advice when needed. There was a time when asking for help felt like weakness, especially when it came to money. I prided myself on being independent, self-reliant, able to manage my household without bothering anyone. That pride served me well for decades. But in retirement, it quietly started working against me. I began making financial decisions on my own with little information. I'd guess what to withdraw, when to help the kids, how much insurance to keep. I told myself I was managing, But really, I was guessing. And guessing is not a plan. One day, a younger friend of mine asked me, "Who helps you with your financial decisions?" I paused. I hadn't thought about it. I'd never asked anyone, not a planner, not a bank advisor, not even my own children. And in that pause, I realized something important. Being in control doesn't mean doing everything alone. There's wisdom in seeking wisdom. It doesn't mean handing over your choices. It means gaining clarity so you can choose better. I finally spoke to a retirement planner. Just one meeting. We didn't overhaul my whole life, but she pointed out small things I had overlooked. An old insurance policy I didn't need anymore, a tax-efficient way to give gifts to my grandchildren, and a mistake I'd been making on my required withdrawals that could have cost me hundreds in penalties. It wasn't about big changes. It was about having someone else look at what I couldn't see. Now I ask questions more freely. I listen. I double-check. I talk to people I trust. And I'm more confident, not less. If you've been doing it all yourself, I understand. But don't let pride cost you peace. You're not weak for asking. You're wise for wanting to do it right. 10. Delaying necessary health or home modifications. There's a strange kind of denial that comes with aging. We feel the changes in our bodies. We notice things getting harder, but we brush them off. I'm fine. It's not that bad. Maybe next year. That mindset nearly cost me more than I can put into words. A few years back, I tripped in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic, just a slip. But it left me with a fractured wrist and 2 months of limited movement. All because I hadn't fixed a loose mat on the floor, something I'd stepped over for years without thinking. That fall didn't just hurt. It opened my eyes. I started looking around the house differently. The narrow hallway, the steep stairs, the old bathtub with no railing. I realized my home was built for a younger version of me, not the man I am now. But for a long time, I put off the changes. Not because I didn't have the money, but because I didn't want to admit I needed them. There's something about installing grab bars or replacing a tub with a walk-in shower that feels like giving up. Like saying, I'm old now. But here's the truth. Making those changes isn't giving up. It's taking control. Since then, I've made quiet updates, brighter lighting, anti-slip flooring, handrails in the bathroom, a more accessible entryway. Each change made life safer, easier, more peaceful. And it's not just about physical safety. It's about freedom. The freedom to stay in your home longer, to live with dignity, to reduce the risk of an accident that could cost far more, financially and emotionally. If there's something in your home that no longer fits your needs, don't wait for an accident to fix it. Do it now while it's a choice, not a reaction. You deserve a home that grows with you, not one that endangers you. Looking back, none of these mistakes came from carelessness. They came from love, from habit, from fear, from the quiet hope that things would just work out. I wasn't foolish. I was simply human. And like many of us, I spent most of my life focusing on how to earn money, not how to spend it wisely once the earning stopped. But here's what I've learned. Growing older doesn't mean the financial lessons stop. In fact, this stage of life might be where they matter the most, because we have less room to recover, but more power to choose with intention. It's not too late to adjust. It's not too late to reflect. And it's never too late to treat your money and yourself with more respect and care. If you recognized yourself in any of these mistakes, I want you to know something. There's no shame in that. We've all made choices we'd rethink now. What matters is what we do next. What matters is that we keep learning, keep listening, and keep living with clarity. Your retirement is not an ending. It's a long, meaningful chapter, and it deserves to be lived with peace, with purpose, and with wisdom. So take a deep breath, take another look at your habits, And if something needs to change, let it change. Gently, intentionally, and with love for the life you still have ahead.